So I want you to picture something for a moment. Just imagine an individual who has basically reached the absolute zenith of their chosen path.
Right, like the very pinnacle of success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let us imagine, a leader navigating the highest echelons of a massive enterprise. Or maybe a dedicated artisan who has just poured an endless tide of time into mastering a singular, demanding craft.
Yeah, someone who really put in the work.
Right. And from the outside looking in, their life is just this magnificent tapestry of achievement, the recognition, the security, the quiet awe of their peers.
It looks perfect to everyone else.
It really does. It is the quintessential picture of societal triumph. But inwardly.
Yeah.
Inwardly, they are completely besieged.
Oh, man, that internal struggle.
Yeah, they're carrying this invisible leaden exhaustion that is just quietly crushing them. It's like a relentless daily struggle just to maintain the facade that everything is perfectly aligned.
Because keeping up appearances takes an immense amount of energy.
So much energy. They wake up every morning, they stare into the mirror, and they recite these hollow, hopeful mantras.
Yeah.
Desperately trying to convince themselves of their own happiness.
Right.
Yet they spend the overwhelming majority of their waking hours narrating a completely silent internal tale of immense stress, of profound isolation, and just an agonizing wait for some external breakthrough to finally make them feel whole.
Oh, the sheer intenseness of that cognitive dissonance, that's where the human spirit slowly begins to fracture.
Fracture? How do you mean?
I mean that immense gap between the external projection of absolute control and the internal reality of quiet desperation, it creates this profound friction.
Like they're living two completely different lives.
Exactly. They're essentially operating as strangers in their own lives. They're broadcasting on a frequency of pure survival, like a hyper-vigilant state of threat assessment.
Even though they have everything.
Right. Ironically, they're surrounded by an endless tide of material abundance. I mean, they have built an empire, but they are living in its dungeon.
Living in its dungeon. Wow, that's a heavy image. But here is where the tension of that existence truly snaps.
When things go wrong.
When things go incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
What happens when the external pillars of this person's meticulously curated world just suddenly crumble?
It's devastating.
Right. Imagine the relentless progression of automation just sweeping through and rendering that lifelong profession utterly obsolete, literally in the blink of an eye.
Or a sudden shift in the market.
Yeah, or imagine a catastrophic, unforeseen event that simply washes away an entire lifetime of physical possessions, leaving them standing on the pavement with, nothing but the clothes on their back.
Well, total reset.
And the devastation we see in those moments, it isn't just a material loss. It is a profound existential collapse.
The foundation is gone.
It's completely gone. The terrifying question that rises from the rubble is, if I am no longer my role, if I am no longer my possessions, if I no longer my social standing, then who am I?
Yeah, it forces a brutal confrontation with the void.
The void.
Right. When the scaffolding of the external world is removed, what actually remains? For the overwhelming majority of individuals navigating modern existence, the immediate panicked answer to that question is just a terrifying nothingness.
Because they've put everything into the external.
Exactly. They look inward and they find an empty room because they have spent the passage of eras storing all their value in external vaults.
And that terrifying nothingness is exactly what we are exploring today. We are going to examine the unseen architecture of the mind.
Unpacking how we actually build our reality.
Yes, uncovering how the stories whispered in the absolute silence of our own thoughts, physically and psychologically construct the very universe we walk through.
It's an internal projection.
Right. So our goal for this analysis is to chart the mechanics of unbinding our identity from this incredibly fragile external world, and instead anchoring it to something unshakable.
Which is so crucial when the external world falls apart.
So when someone is staring into that absolute void, completely stripped of their worldly definitions, and feeling that intense panic, where is the starting line for rebuilding?
Well, we must start by dissecting the illusion of the external itself.
Okay, the illusion of the external.
Yeah, because the core crisis stems from a deeply ingrained conditioning. Humanity has been subtly trained to tie its entire sense of self to the physical plane.
Like our jobs and stuff.
Job titles, the magnitude of wealth in a ledger, the exclusivity of social circles, the aesthetic validation of peers. These are all external variables completely subject to the unforgiving laws of change.
Right. None of it is permanent.
The physical plane is, by its very nature, a landscape of constant mutation.
It's always shifting.
Always. So when these variables are inevitably stripped away or altered, the individual experiences a profound identity crisis. They feel entirely adrift because they have built their psychological fortress on shifting sands.
But I want to challenge how we view that conditioning, though.
Sure, go ahead.
Because it is incredibly easy to sit here and say, don't tie your identity to your job.
Yeah,
But society demands it.
it really does.
You meet a stranger, and the very first inquiry is always, what do you do?
Every single time.
Right. We are culturally mandated to identify entirely with our labor and our output. It is how we are categorized, it's how we are valued, and frankly, how we secure our survival.
It's the currency of social interaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So separating oneself from a life's work isn't just a nice philosophical exercise. It feels like an act of rebellion against the entire social order.
I agree completely. It is an active rebellion, and the resistance you are describing highlights the incredible vulnerability of what we might call the human avatar.
The human avatar, I like that phrase. What exactly is that?
The avatar is the persona forged by past programming, by those exact societal expectations you just mentioned, and by the accumulation of historical experiences.
So it's the character we play.
Yes, it is the character we have agreed to play on the stage of life to ensure we are accepted and secure. But the true identity, the unshakable core, is not the avatar. The true identity is the observer behind the eyes of the avatar.
The observer. Okay. How do we distinguish the observer from the avatar in a practical sense?
It can be tricky at first.
Yeah, because when you are in the thick of a crisis, those two things feel entirely fused together,
They do, but
Right.
think of it this way. The essence of who you are, the pure awareness that is processing my words right now, feels exactly the same across the passage of eras.
Oh, like when I think back to being a kid.
Precisely. That silent, internal presence witnessed the dawn of your earliest memories with the exact same clarity and unchanging awareness as it witnesses the twilight of your current maturity.
That's a wild thought.
The physical body ages, the societal roles mutate, the bank balance swells and recedes, the emotional weather patterns shift from joy to sorrow. But that silent witness, the observer, remains entirely untouched by the turbulence of the physical plane.
It just watches.
It simply watches.
So it's like, let me try an analogy. It's like an actor who has worn a magnificent, incredibly heavy, ornate mask for such a vast constellation of time that they have genuinely forgotten the shape of their own face beneath it.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
Right. The mask has just become their reality. Their nervous system thinks the mask is their actual skin.
Yes, exactly.
And when that mask is abruptly removed, whether by an economic shift, by a sudden disaster, or even by a voluntary retirement, the sudden exposure to the open air doesn't initially feel like liberation.
No, it feels terrifying.
It feels like a suffocation. It feels like a death, even though it is simply a return to the underlying truth of who they actually are.
That captures the terror perfectly.
Yeah.
The ego, which essentially operates the mask, genuinely believes it is dying when its primary identifiers are removed.
Because it doesn't know anything else.
Right. The ego is a sorting mechanism. It thrives on labels, on boundaries, on clearly defined parameters of this is me and that is not me.
It needs walls.
It desperately needs walls to know where it stands. When you strip those away, the ego panics because it cannot comprehend existence in the infinite.
But beneath the panic,
Beneath that intense panic of the ego is the quiet, patient triumph of the observer, finally unencumbered by the heavy armor.
But wait, if the ego is panicking, it is throwing the body into a physiological crisis.
Absolutely. The body responds immediately.
The heart rate is spiking. The stress hormones are flooding the system. Telling someone in that state, don't worry, you are just the infinite observer, sounds incredibly disconnected from the bodily reality of their suffering.
It can sound very dismissive if not understood properly.
So how do we bridge the gap between this high-level realization of the observer and the intensely physical feeling of panic when our identity is shattered?
By recognizing that the panic itself is just another phenomenon being observed.
Okay, walk me through that.
The bridge is the shift in identification. When the heart rate spikes and the cortisol floods the system, the avatar says, I am dying. I am terrified.
Right, you feel like you are the fear.
But the observer says, I am witnessing a body experiencing profound fear.
Oh, wow.
That slight linguistic and psychological shift creates a microscopic gap of space between the stimulus and the response.
Just a tiny bit of distance.
And in that gap, freedom is born. You realize you are not the storm. You are the sky in which the storm is temporarily raging.
You are not the storm. You are the sky. That is a staggering shift in perspective.
It changes everything.
It really does. So I want to ask anyone listening to this right now to engage in a radical thought experiment.
Please do.
Imagine stripping away every single title you currently hold. Remove every achievement, every award, every physical possession. Take away your relationships, your reputation, your entire history of triumphs and failures.
Leave nothing but the awareness.
Exactly. What unassailable essence remains in that quiet, empty space left behind? Because whatever is left when the entirety of the external world is gone, that silent awareness, that is the only thing that is actually real.
Locating that unchanging observer is the absolute foundation of conscious reality creation.
Why is it the foundation?
Because once you anchor your identity there, you realize you possess a vantage point outside of the physical plane's immediate drama.
You aren't swept away by it anymore.
Right. You are no longer entirely submerged in the chaotic narrative of the external world. You are watching it unfold from a place of sanctuary.
A place of peace.
And from that elevated vantage point, you begin to perceive the hidden mechanics of existence. You begin to understand how the internal world actually projects outward to form the circumstances you experience.
Which brings us to a fascinating concept, often summarized by the ancient maxim. As within, so without.
Yes, the principle of correspondence.
The principle of correspondence. It is the proposition that the external physical reality is not a random series of events, but merely a mirror reflecting the internal mental and spiritual planes.
It is an immutable mechanic of reality. The physical plane is always the effect. The mental and spiritual planes are always the cause.
The cause and effect are linked.
Yes. One cannot manifest a life of supreme ease, boundless abundance, or profound joy while internally broadcasting an intense, unyielding frequency of struggle, loneliness, and stress.
Because it just doesn't match.
It is an energetic contradiction. A mirror can only reflect the exact image that is placed before it.
Right. I mean, you can't stand in front of a mirror with a furious scowl on your face and scream at the reflection, demanding that it smile first.
That would be absurd.
It completely defies the fundamental physics of reality. Yet, that is exactly how so many of us approach our lives.
We do it constantly.
We demand the external world bring us peace so that we can finally relax, completely ignoring that our internal state is the blueprint the external world is following.
Exactly. And to understand how this blueprint is drafted, we have to examine the physiological mechanics of the mind. Specifically, the default mode network.
Wait, what network?
The default mode network.
What does that mean?
It is a network of interacting brain regions that becomes highly active when we are not focused on the outside world. It is the neurological seat of our subconscious self-referential thought.
So it's what's running in the background.
Yes, it is the continuous looping script of stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we deserve, and how dangerous or welcoming the world is.
Oh, so it's the narrator in our head that never shuts up when we are washing the dishes or trying to fall asleep.
Precisely. And for a vast constellation of individuals, this network is perpetually running a deeply ingrained script of scarcity, of impending danger, of the absolute necessity of endless toil just to survive.
A constant state of worry.
Yes. This constant, low-grade neurological alarm system dictates their baseline frequency. It floods their body with stress chemistry, which in turn reinforces the feeling of danger, creating a closed loop of anxiety.
This perfectly explains why trying to force a change purely from the outside in fails so spectacularly.
It never works.
Let's look at a common scenario. Someone is completely burnt out, right? Their default mode network is just screaming with anxiety. Their cortisol is through the roof. What is their solution?
Vacation.
Exactly. They attempt to purchase external relaxation. They buy an expensive ticket. They flee to a distant, sun-drenched shoreline, thinking the sheer presence of an ocean breeze will somehow cure their psychological exhaustion.
And we all know how that ends.
What happens? They bring the raging storm of their internal anxiety right there with them onto the pristine sand.
Because the brain came with them.
Right. They sit by the water, entirely incapable of resting, because their internal script is still demanding that they worry, that they strive, that they protect themselves from some unseen catastrophic threat.
They are exhausting themselves attempting to alter the reflection in the mirror without fundamentally changing the object casting it.
It's just a waste of energy.
It is a futile exertion of vital energy. If the experiential signature of what you desire is freedom and profound peace, you must cultivate the absolute magnitude of that peace inwardly first, completely independent of your external circumstances.
The internal has to come first.
The internal state must precede the external manifestation.
I am struggling with this sequence, though.
Tell me why.
Well, I have to push back on the idea that the internal state must always precede the external, especially when we factor in extreme hardship.
That's a fair concern.
If someone's current reality is starkly bare, say they are facing absolute financial ruin or deep isolation, how does a person genuinely cultivate a feeling of immense abundance or peace?
It's incredibly difficult.
It feels dangerously close to toxic positivity, telling someone to simply feel abundant when their plate is literally empty.
That is a crucial distinction, and it requires moving away from the idea of faking an emotion, which is what toxic positivity demands.
So we aren't pretending.
We're not talking about delusion. We are talking about nervous system regulation.
Okay, nervous system regulation.
When an individual is facing financial ruin, their autonomic nervous system is locked in a sympathetic survival state.
Fight or flight.
Yes. In this state, the brain literally narrows its focus to only perceive immediate threats. It shuts down the creative problem-solving centers.
It creates tunnel vision.
Exactly. So asking them to cultivate abundance isn't about pretending the bank account is full. It is about deliberately shifting the nervous system out of survival mode and into a parasympathetic state of rest and digest.
How do you do that when everything is falling apart?
You do this through directed focus. Deliberately slowing the breath, grounding the body, and consciously commanding the muscles to release tension.
So very physical actions.
Highly physical,
Right.
by physically generating a feeling of safety in the present moment, because in this exact millisecond, they are breathing and alive, they alter their internal frequency.
Let me see if I can ground this with an analogy of acoustic resonance.
I love analogies, go for it.
Think about a tightly wound violin string that is producing a harsh, discordant note. You cannot force that string to play a beautiful, harmonious note simply by shouting at it.
No, it won't listen.
You can't demand it vibrate at a higher frequency while its physical tension is tuned to a lower one.
The physics won't allow it.
Right. You must reach out, take the tuning peg, and fundamentally alter its tension. Once the tension is changed, the string naturally, effortlessly vibrates at the desired frequency when struck.
Beautifully said.
So what you were saying is that regulating the nervous system is the act of turning the tuning peg.
That is precisely what it is. You bypass the terrifying external circumstances for just a moment, and you manually tune the physical and mental instrument.
You just pause the outside world.
When you consciously slow your breath and generate a localized feeling of safety in your body, you are tuning the string. You are signaling to your deeply reactive subconscious, it is safe to exist in this moment. We are secure.
And what happens when you do that?
Once that frequency of safety is established, the brain's creative centers come back online. The tunnel vision expands. The individual suddenly perceives opportunities, solutions, and resources in their environment that were literally invisible to them when they were locked in the frequency of panic.
So it isn't about ignoring the empty plate. It's about shifting the internal state so you can actually figure out how to fill it, rather than just staring at it in paralyzed terror.
Yes, you must become a physiological and energetic match for the reality you wish to navigate.
A match for the reality.
If you desire a life characterized by ease and fluid solutions, you cannot use sheer panic and frantic stress as the vehicles to get there. The vehicle must fundamentally match the destination.
That makes so much sense.
A journey undertaken in terror will only lead to a destination of further exhaustion.
This feels like a moment where we need to stop and really examine our own daily lives.
An audit, so to speak.
Yes, an audit. If you're listening to this, I invite you to audit your internal narrative today.
Pay attention to the background noise.
Pay attention to the silent conversations you have with yourself while driving or, while waiting in line. Are the stories you tell yourself in harmony with the life you claim to desire?
Most of the time they aren't.
Or are you subtly, quietly rehearsing a script of unending hardship? Are you verbally declaring you want a life of joy and connection, but spending your silent moments meticulously planning for betrayal and catastrophe?
Preparing for the worst.
Because the architecture of reality is listening to the persistent whisper of your default mode network, not the occasional loud shout of your wishful thinking.
And understanding that persistent whisper leads us directly into observing how we interact with the world around us.
Where does it lead us?
It brings us to the profound difference between moving through life from a state of inherent wholeness versus operating from a hidden state of lack. This is where the concept of true magnetism comes into play.
Magnetism. Okay, this is incredibly compelling
Yeah.
because we've established that the internal state dictates the external reality, but how does that actually manifest in terms of what we draw into our lives?
It dictates what you attract.
We are talking about genuine attraction,
Right.
not the manipulative tactics of trying to get people to like you, but an effortless drawing in of circumstances and connections.
True magnetism arises exclusively from a state of complete, unwavering wholeness. Conversely, when an individual operates from a state of lack, when there is a deep, unhealed internal void, they emit what we can categorize as a proving energy.
Proving energy, what did that look like in action?
It is the exhausting, relentless, and often subconscious effort to convince the external world, and consequently themselves, of their inherent value.
So it's about showing off.
It manifests as the need to always have the last word, the compulsion to flaunt achievements, or the desperate desire to be indispensable to an employer or a partner.
Just trying to be needed.
They are utilizing external validation, relationships, or material acquisitions in a futile attempt to plug a hole that exists purely in the psychological and spiritual planes.
That neediness, that desperate grasping for external validation seems like a massive vulnerability.
It is the ultimate vulnerability.
It is almost like bleeding in water full of predators.
Exactly. When you fundamentally require the external world to validate your existence or soothe your anxiety, you leave yourself entirely open to profound manipulation and endless, exhausting chasing.
Because you'll do anything for that validation.
You become highly susceptible to fear-based narratives, whether from marketing, from toxic relationships, or from societal pressures. These narratives falsely promise salvation or completeness for a steep price.
And people buy into it.
You can be led anywhere and convinced to do almost anything if someone simply promises to quench that desperate internal thirst.
We see this constantly in hustle culture.
Oh, everywhere.
We are relentlessly taught that ambition requires a deep, agonizing hunger. We are told you must cultivate a profound dissatisfaction with your present circumstances in order to achieve greatness.
Never settle.
Right, the entire narrative is stay hungry, stay desperate, never be satisfied. But what you are describing completely inverts that paradigm. If hunger is a vulnerability, then modern ambition is largely built on a foundation of profound weakness.
It is built on a foundation of fear.
Fear of what?
The fear of not being enough, the fear of being left behind. Ambition born of lack is a torment. It is a state of perpetual striving where the horizon of satisfaction constantly recedes.
You never arrive.
The moment an achievement is unlocked, the ego instantly moves the goalpost because the internal void was never actually addressed.
Let me propose an alternative perspective on ambition and desire.
Let's hear it.
Imagine the difference between two individuals taking action. The first is a desperate person, lost in a barren landscape, clawing at the dry earth with bleeding fingers, trying to squeeze out a single muddy drop of water simply to survive the hour.
Pure survival mode.
Their action is intense, it is driven, it is undeniably ambitious. But the second person is a serene gardener who is joyfully planting seeds in rich, fertile soil.
A totally different energy.
Right. They are working hard, they are sweating in the sun, but they are doing it simply because they already possess an overflowing, inexhaustible well of water to nourish whatever they plant.
They aren't worried about the harvest.
Both individuals are taking massive action. Both are creating a result in the physical plane. But the internal frequency driving the action is entirely opposed.
That is a masterful distinction. The frantic clawing comes from the ego, from the deeply ingrained belief in scarcity and separation.
And the gardener.
The serene, joyful planting comes from the infinite observer, from the absolute knowing of inherent abundance. Desire, when it is born of wholeness, is not a desperate need to acquire.
What is it then?
It is simply consciousness choosing how it wishes to beautifully expand and experience itself in the physical realm. You do not need to be starving to enjoy the complexities of a magnificent feast.
That's a great point.
In fact, the desperation of starvation entirely ruins the ability to savor the subtle flavors of the meal. You simply devour it in a panic.
Exactly. You are bolting it down just to survive the terror of the void rather than tasting the experience. So the critical question becomes, how do we heal this void?
By finding its source.
How do we stop the leak so we aren't constantly bleeding out this exhausting, proving energy and attracting manipulation?
The profound healing occurs when we trace the origin of the void. This often requires journeying backward in our own consciousness, moving past the adult avatar and accessing the stored emotional memories of the distant past.
We're talking about repressed memories here.
Not necessarily repressed, but unresolved emotional imprints.
Unresolved feelings.
Yes. By entering a quiet, deeply reflective state again, regulating the nervous system to achieve safety, we can encounter the past versions of ourselves.
Our younger selves.
We locate the younger, fractured iterations of our identity who, in specific moments of the passage of eras, felt deeply unloved, intensely unworthy, or fundamentally unsafe.
And we usually try to ignore those parts, don't we?
Constantly. The adult avatar often tries to ignore or suppress these younger iterations because they carry pain. But from our current anchored vantage point as the infinite observer, we have the capacity to do something remarkable.
What can we do?
We can turn inward and provide those younger selves with a vast constellation of love, profound reassurance, and total unconditional acceptance.
It's essentially using the power of focused imagination to go back in time and rescue yourself.
That's exactly what it is.
You become the protector that your younger self desperately needed but never had.
Precisely. The subconscious mind does not distinctly differentiate between a vividly imagined internal experience and a physical external event.
Wait, really? It treats them the same.
Yes. When you internally provide that profound compassion to the fractured parts of your psyche, you literally rewire the emotional associations in the brain. You mend the void not with external trinkets or fleeting praise from a boss, but with internal, limitless, self-generated compassion.
And when that internal mending happens, the external shift must be incredible to witness.
It's often miraculous. Individuals who achieve this state of intense, blissful completeness inadvertently draw the world to them without lifting a finger.
It's that magnetism we talked about.
It is a well-documented phenomenon to see innocent creatures, young children, animals inexplicably drawn to these individuals.
Because they feel safe.
They are entirely magnetized by an undeniable, invisible aura of absolute peace. These individuals possess a frequency of profound safety. Because there is no longer any grasping, pulling, or desperate proving energy to subtly repel others, they simply exist in a state of rest.
Just resting in their wholeness.
They are resting in their own completeness and in a chaotic, fear-driven world that is the most intensely attractive force in the universe.
That brings up a really poignant reflection for anyone navigating a highly driven life.
A question of where our energy goes.
Yeah. Where might you be leaking your immense personal power by desperately seeking external approval? Where are you frantically clawing at the dry earth, trying to squeeze a drop of validation out of your career or your relationships?
It's a hard question to face.
What specific part of you, perhaps a much younger, more fragile version of you, desperately needs to hear a message of absolute inward reassurance from your highest self today?
What void are you trying to fill?
Right. What bottomless void are you exhausting yourself trying to fill with a promotion or a luxury purchase that could be instantly, permanently healed by simply turning inward and offering yourself profound, unconditional love?
And as individuals begin to ask those profound questions, they inevitably encounter a critical, often dangerous misunderstanding in their internal work.
A misunderstanding. What kind?
They begin to clearly recognize their old patterns. They see the desperate clawing energy. They identify the coping mechanisms of the avatar, and a new kind of fear arises.
Like a fear of themselves.
Yes. They decide that these old parts of themselves are toxic, that they are the enemy, and that they must be entirely eradicated. This brings us directly to the prevalent and highly destructive myth of ego death.
The violent destruction of the old self.
You see it everywhere.
You really encounter this rhetoric everywhere in transformational spaces.
Yeah.
There's this pervasive, highly dramatized idea that to truly change your life, you must burn your past identity to the ground.
Kill the ego.
Exactly. You must wage a holy war against your old habits, violently slay your ego, and rise from the ashes as a completely new entity. It sounds incredibly heroic, but fundamentally, it is a complete fallacy, isn't it?
It is worse than a fallacy. It is actively, mechanically counterproductive to actual transformation.
Why is that?
The entire premise is deeply flawed because it assumes the old self is a malicious enemy occupying your mind. By adopting this aggressive stance, the individual creates a literal theater of war within their own nervous system.
And a nervous system at war cannot heal.
Exactly. When you declare war on a part of yourself, you activate the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center.
You trigger the survival state again.
You flood your body with the exact same stress chemistry you are supposedly trying to escape. Furthermore, there is a fundamental mechanical truth regarding attention.
Which is?
Fighting the old self only imbues it with greater power and massive relevance. The universal rule is that where attention goes, energy flows.
So by fighting it, you feed it.
If your entire daily focus is consumed by the effort to destroy a bad habit or suppress an old identity, your intense, unyielding focus is actually keeping the neural pathways of that identity alive, active, and fully illuminated in your mental plane.
Wow.
Transformation is never achieved through destruction. It is achieved entirely through the deliberate shifting of focus.
Let's really emphasize that. Transformation is not about destruction. It is entirely about shifting focus. If we aren't destroying the old self, how should we view these old destructive patterns?
We have to reframe them.
Because clearly, if someone has a habit of intense self-sabotage, they can't just let it run wild.
We have to completely dismantle the necessity of this violent ego death. We must look at the past versions of ourselves, the iterations that operated from fear, from lack, from that exhausting, proving energy through a lens of profound clarity.
How so?
They were never malicious. They were simply protectors.
Protectors.
They adopted certain behaviors, certain defensive postures, and certain limiting beliefs simply to survive the intense circumstances they were placed in during the dawn of their experience.
They were doing the best they could.
They were doing the absolute best they could with the limited tools they possessed.
So a defensive coping mechanism like, say, shutting down emotionally during a conflict wasn't a flaw. It was a psychological shield forged to protect a vulnerable child.
Precisely. Shaming that shield, resenting the protector, or trying to violently obliterate it generates a low-frequency friction within your own consciousness. It is a rejection of your own survival instincts.
If we aren't attacking our past selves, what is the actual mechanism for neutralizing those old patterns?
Gratitude and dismissal.
Gratitude and dismissal. Okay.
One should acknowledge the old self with profound, genuine gratitude. You mentally embrace that past iteration, that outdated coping mechanism, and you communicate with it.
What do you say?
You say, "Thank you for protecting me when I did not know any better. You served your purpose beautifully and you kept me alive." You validate its existence, but then you gently, yet with absolute unshakable firmness, remove its relevance over your present decisions. You simply relieve it of duty. You tell it, "I have new tools now. You can rest."
I want to expand on this mechanism with an analogy of performance.
Please do.
Imagine a master performer, an actor of legendary caliber operating on the grandest stages of performance. Let's say they have just concluded a run playing a beloved, highly energetic, heroic, cosmic traveler.
Okay, an iconic role.
It's the role of a lifetime, and the character's mannerisms are deeply ingrained in their muscle memory. But now the season has ended, and they have accepted a completely new role.
What's the new role?
They're going to play a deeply complex, incredibly still, sinister antagonist in a new production. To become the antagonist, the performer does not have to hunt down and assassinate the cosmic traveler.
They don't have to destroy the hero.
They don't have to violently destroy the costume, burn the old scripts in a bonfire, or hate the hero they used to play. What do?
They just switch focus.
They simply stop playing the part. They transfer the entirety of their brilliant, singular focus, their vital life force, into studying the psychology, the stillness, and the mannerisms of the new character.
The old character just goes into the archives.
Exactly. The old character still exists perfectly preserved in the archives of their experience, but it has zero relevance on the new stage. It is simply starved of the performer's animating intention.
That perfectly illustrates the mechanics of identity shifting and neuroplasticity. You are the master performer, and the physical plane is your stage.
The stage of life.
You do not need to violently destroy the character you played yesterday. You simply withdraw your life force, your attention, and your emotional resonance from that outdated script. You forge new pathways through the wilderness of the mind, while quietly letting the old roads return to nature.
Let me propose an even more expansive, cosmic view of this shift in attention.
Let's zoom out.
Think about observing the infinite night sky. If we wish to study a newly birthed, brilliantly shining star, we don't have to somehow travel across the galaxy to extinguish a dying star first.
We don't have to fight the old star.
We don't wage a war on the old star to make room for the new one. We simply adjust our instrument. We aim our telescope at a completely different patch of the infinite sky. We change our focal point, and by doing so, the old star naturally leaves our field of vision.
The telescope analogy is remarkably precise because it beautifully highlights the function of the reticular activating system within the human brain.
The reticular activating system, let's explore exactly how that works, because this is the biological mechanism of everything we're discussing.
The reticular activating system, or RAS, is a bundle of nerves at our brainstem that filters out unnecessary information so the important stuff gets through.
It's the gatekeeper.
In any given millisecond, your senses are bombarded by an endless tide of sensory information. If you processed all of it, you would go mad. So the RAS acts as the gatekeeper.
And how does it know what to let through?
It takes its direct orders from what you focus on, where your telescope is pointed.
It filters reality based on your internal instructions.
Exactly. If you are entirely focused on fighting your old habits, your RAS says, the old habit is extremely important to us. Consequently, your brain will constantly highlight your struggles, it will actively notice every tiny failure, and it will keep the presence of the old habit hyper-visible in your reality.
Because you told it to.
You are literally instructing your brain to look for the struggle. But if you starve the old self of attention, if you relieve it of duty, and relentlessly focus your telescope on the beliefs, the subtle actions, and the profound feelings of the new identity you choose to embody, the RAS shifts its filtering.
It starts looking for evidence of the new identity.
Yes, it begins to highlight opportunities that match the new frequency. It filters out the triggers of the old habit because they are no longer deemed important. The old self simply atrophies from a lack of neuroelectrical use. It dissolves naturally, beautifully, without drama or violence, simply because the light of your attention has moved elsewhere.
It is the profound difference between exhausting yourself fighting the darkness and simply walking across the room to turn on a light.
The darkness isn't destroyed.
It is merely replaced by the presence of light. So I want to ask everyone reflecting on this to consider, how often do you actively battle your own habits?
How much energy goes into that fight?
How often are you creating a literal war zone inside your own mind, trying to beat yourself into submission, trying to punish the darkness away? What if today you simply laid down your weapons?
Just stop the fight.
What if you ceased fire, stopped fighting the old version of you, profoundly thanked it for its long service, and simply turned your gaze entirely toward the bright horizon you actually wish to reach?
And when you finally lay down those weapons, when in the internal theater of war goes quiet and you anchor your identity in the infinite observer, you unlock a profound level of mastery over your human experience.
A true mastery.
You naturally escape what we might call the exhausting pendulum swing of the physical plane.
The pendulum swing. Let's examine this mechanism, because escaping it is the ultimate liberation. The physical plane is entirely defined by polarity, isn't it?
Always oscillating.
Up and down, hot and cold, the extreme violent oscillations between intense, fleeting euphoria and utterly devastating despair.
Yes. The physical plane operates on the immutable law of rhythm. Tides come in, tides go out. Seasons shift from the absolute abundance of summer to the barren stillness of winter.
There's always a swing.
The pendulum swings forcefully to the right, and therefore, by the laws of physics, it must swing with a balanced equilibrium to the left.
Equal force.
When your identity is entirely bound to the fragile human avatar, to the ever-changing circumstances of the physical world, you are psychologically strapped to the very bottom, the heaviest part of that swinging pendulum.
So you are feeling the maximum velocity of every single swing.
You are violently whipped back and forth by every economic shift, every interpersonal conflict, every minor success, and every perceived failure.
It's exhausting.
When things go well, you are thrown into the air with euphoria. When things inevitably shift, you are smashed into the ground of despair. It is a profoundly exhausting, reactive way to exist. You have zero center of gravity.
But by anchoring your identity in the infinite observer rather than the avatar, you essentially unbuckle yourself from the bottom of the pendulum weight.
You start moving up.
You move your consciousness up the arm of the pendulum, moving closer and closer to the fulcrum, the pivot point at the very top.
The still point.
And at the fulcrum, the swing is barely felt. The weight at the bottom might be traveling a massive distance back and forth, but the pivot point is only shifting a microscopic amount.
That is the exact mechanical transition. You soften the harsh, violent impacts of physical reality. You observe the massive swing of the world without being pulverized by its momentum.
You watch the winter arrive.
You watch the winter arrive without fearing you will freeze, because you know the summer is already on its return arc. This upward movement along the pendulum perfectly mirrors the grand evolution of human awareness itself.
Let's trace that evolution. What are the specific stages of moving up the pendulum toward the fulcrum?
We can observe a progression of states of conscious evolution. In the earliest, most reactive phase, an individual feels like a pure victim of circumstance.
The victim phase.
Their core belief is that life happens to them. They are strapped to the absolute bottom of the pendulum, entirely at the mercy of external forces. They live in a state of perpetual defense and chronic grievance.
A very heavy, exhausting place to be. What causes the shift to the next phase?
Usually, the pain of being a victim becomes so intolerable that the individual decides to take control. They evolve into a phase of forceful striving.
Striving.
Their new belief is that life happens by them. They attempt to wrestle the pendulum, to halt its swing, or force it to stay on the side of success through immense willpower, relentless hustle, and aggressive struggle.
Trying to force the outcome.
They achieve results, but the friction is immense. They are constantly fighting the natural rhythm of the universe.
This is the proving energy stage we discussed earlier. The clawing at the earth.
Exactly. And eventually, the sheer exhaustion of fighting the universe forces another surrender. They mature into a third phase, becoming a vessel for life's flow.
The flow state.
They realize that life happens through them. They begin to drop the immense resistance. They tune their instrument, they regulate their nervous system, and they allow inspiration to guide their actions rather than fear.
They ride the swing instead of fighting it.
They ride the swing smoothly, using its momentum.
That sounds incredibly peaceful.
Yeah.
But there's a final realization beyond even that flow state, isn't there?
Yes. The ultimate expansion is recognizing oneself purely as consciousness exploring itself. In this final state, the individual realizes that life happens as them.
Life happens as them.
They realize they are not merely the vessel, they are the infinite pure energy that animates the entire experience. They are the pendulum, they are the fulcrum, and they are the space in which the pendulum swings.
And in that final expansive state, the entire purpose of life shifts. Life is no longer a test to be passed or a battle to be won. It is simply meant to be a rich, endlessly unfolding tapestry of expansion.
A canvas for experience.
You realize that reliving the same struggles endlessly, refusing to shift your internal frequency out of stubbornness or fear, is like spending your whole life meticulously stitching over the exact same single gray thread on a massive blank canvas.
It's repetitive and dull.
It adds absolutely no depth, no color, and no beauty to the grand design of your existence.
Exactly. Consciousness inherently desires to expand into new, vibrant experiences. By realizing the self is infinite, pure energy, you don't magically make the physical world start moving.
The rhythms still happen.
The economic rhythms, the changing of seasons, the rise and fall of circumstances still exist, but your internal baseline of joy continually ascends.
You don't drop into despair.
The backward swing of the pendulum, the moment of perceived loss or delay, no longer plunges you into existential despair. It merely serves as a brief, quiet resting point, a gathering of potential energy before a much higher, more magnificent ascent.
The baseline is joy.
The baseline of your existence is no longer neutral survival. The baseline is a quiet, unshakable joy.
I just sit here and process the sheer, breathtaking liberation of this truth.
It is incredibly freeing.
What this fundamentally means, at a mechanical, psychological, and spiritual level, is that you are not tasked with the exhausting, impossible labor of bending the vast universe to your individual will.
You don't have to force anything.
You do not have to forcefully manipulate the world to give you what you want. Rather, your only task is to simply drop the heavy, rusted armor of your old beliefs, to release your proving energy, and to heal your hidden lack.
Just let it go.
And the miraculous thing is, when you finally unbuckle that heavy armor and let it fall away, your own inherent natural buoyancy effortlessly lifts you from the dark depths, raising you to the surface of the water so you can finally breathe the open air.
You float.
You don't have to swim frantically, you just have to stop holding on to the weights.
That is the beautiful essence of conscious reality creation. You are not painstakingly building a precarious staircase to the stars, attempting to climb your way out of the void through sheer effort. You are simply severing the anchor lines that prevent you from naturally floating upward.
The art of subtraction.
It is a profound process of subtraction. It is the art of letting go of the heavy illusions that bind you to the lower frequencies of struggle.
So as we draw this incredibly expansive journey to a close, as we pull all these threads together into a single tapestry, this is my final call to you listening right now.
A moment of reflection.
I want you to completely reevaluate how you view your current struggles. Do not view them as permanent, unchangeable fixtures of your being. They are not the truth of who you are. View them as mere fleeting scenes in a passing play, a production where you actually hold the pen, the script, and the directorial power.
We have traveled a vast distance today. We started at the terrifying initial shock of a shattered external identity, that heart-stopping moment the facade crumbles and the void opens up.
And then we move past it.
We move through the empowering, precise mechanics of altering our internal frequency, understanding how our nervous system tunes the reality we perceive. And we explored the profound necessity of journeying inward to heal our oldest, deepest voids with unconditional self-compassion.
We've seen with absolute clarity that we do not need to wage a violent, exhausting war to destroy our past in order to claim our future.
Transformation is peaceful.
We only need to lay down our weapons, shift our telescope, and direct our brilliant, unbroken attention toward the reality we consciously choose to inhabit. We are not the fragile avatars battling the storm. We are the infinite observers of our own beautifully unfolding narrative.
The ultimate power you possess lies entirely in the quiet, undeniable realization that the external world is not your master. It is simply a mirror, patiently waiting for your internal cue.
Waiting for your lead.
When you regulate your system, when you drop the proving energy, and when you fundamentally change the internal resonance of your being, the physical plane has absolutely no choice but to rearrange its elements to match your new expansive frequency.
So I want to leave you with one final profound inquiry to ponder in the quiet moments after this conversation ends.
Take this with you.
As you go about your day, as you feel the friction of your current challenges, hold this thought. If the grand infinite tapestry of reality is entirely responsive to the character you consciously choose to embody, what if the very struggle you are so desperately trying to escape right now, the stress that is keeping you awake at night, is merely a supporting role you completely forgot you auditioned for?
What a thought.
And what happens? The incredibly beautiful silent moment. You realize you have the absolute power to simply drop the script, walk off that stage, and write a new ending. Think back to the beginning of our exploration.
To that zenith.
Think of that exhausted leader, that tired artisan, standing alone in the quiet of their room, staring intensely into the mirror, reciting hopeful mantras, desperately searching for their true self in the reflection.
Waiting for the breakthrough.
The ultimate liberating realization is that the glass is just glass. It can only show what is offered to it. The truth, the absolute power, the infinite, unassailable reality is not the reflection. It is the quiet, eternal presence looking back. Until next time, keep observing.